Hi, and a warm welcome to Whisky Sisters, the podcast. I am Jennifer Rose.
And I am Inka Larissa.
Together we are
Whisky Sisters.
We would love you to join our weekly adventures. Come on, let us rock your whisky world. There'll be lots of news, gossip, bottle releases, and we will be raising our glasses through the tastiest of drams.
We'll be hosting expert guests, hitting the road, and visiting some of the distilleries near you. And let's not forget dropping in some cheeky whiskey facts. Join our whiskey journey.
A warm Whisky Sisters welcome.
This week we are talking about independent bottlers, and we will be sampling a few Indy drams later on.
Yes, we are spoiled for choice, and this is a very busy dram on fire this week with drams from 4 different independent bottlers. But now let's stick our noses into the latest whisky news.
Stick your nose in it.
Ian McLeod and a team of 4 students from Heriot International Centre for Brewing and Distilling collaborated to create the new whisky. Together, they looked for an ideal method for finishing blended Scotch whisky in a virgin American oak cask, looking at 4 components: fill strength, blend formulation, time in the cask, and toast char level. The resulting 3-year-old blend is composed of 45% Speyside, 15% Highland, and 40% Lowland whiskies. The liquid spent 3 months finishing in virgin American oak barrel, leading to an aroma of toffee and coconut with a warming base of clove and cinnamon. Sweet coffee and rich chocolate follow on the palate with a finish of spice and lively oak character. It's bottled at 44.4% ABV, blending room 01, Heriot Watt Release is available to purchase for £35 British. So the launch marks the first collaboration between Ian McLeod and the university's International Centre for Brewing and Distilling, with annual limited releases planned as part of the project. A Scotch whisky producer has also gifted equipment to the university's sensory suite to help the scholars in their studies.
Yeah, and they actually sent us a bottle to try, which we haven't opened yet. I actually visited the university one time because I was trying to figure out what do I want to do with my life, and I was thinking maybe I want to do some distilling and stuff.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
But then I did the tour and I was like, oh, it's just maybe a little bit too much chemistry for my liking.
Right.
I'm not like, even, like when I'm cooking, I can't do baking because you have to measure everything so carefully. But like with cooking, I'm like, yeah, a little bit that to measure anything ever. So I don't think I would be very good.
Super admire when people are good at at scientific stuff, and it does really interest me, but I've just not got that kind of brain. I used to buy New Scientist and read the articles, but couldn't even regurgitate the chat to people at the pub because I was just like, oh, I don't quite understand it enough to actually relay the story.
So there's been another bit of news for the peat lovers. PM Suntory, the owner of Lafroig and Movember, has entered a partnership to restore peatlands in Ayrshire as it works towards the conservation of the equal amount of peat used to make its Islay single malts. PM Suntory will provide £385,000 of funding to restore and regenerate peatland in East Ayrshire, and the work will take place over 4 years, covering approximately 160 hectares of land owned by RCPB Scotland.
Lovely regeneration and balancing things out.
Yeah, exactly. We want to keep drinking peated whiskey, but it's good to know that they are doing their bit too.
Yeah.
So also, because it's November, Buffalo Trace is celebrating Movember by launching a campaign in the UK to raise funds and awareness for men's health. Participating bars across the UK will offer a Buffalo Trace old-fashioned garnished with a mustache-shaped orange peel. The whiskey brand hopes that the garnish will serve as a reminder of the importance of conversations in challenging the status quo of men's health.
How cool is that? Personally, I think moustaches should be all year round because I love a good moustache. I think it was watching Magnum and loving Tom Selleck in the 1980s.
Yeah.
Let's rock.
Okay, so independent bottlers are companies that have the desire to sell whisky but don't necessarily want or have the means to open their own distillery. They purchase individual barrels from distilleries which they later bottle under their own branded label. This is something that I personally found a little bit confusing when I was new to the whisky world. They have the power to choose when to bottle or re-rack, and that way they create their own unique whisky.
Yeah, so like Jen mentioned, independent bottlers can provide non-typical whiskey from a distillery by using several techniques. As an example, they can choose to provide cask-strength spirit rather than diluting it with water, or to provide bottles at different ages than the distillery's standard releases, or finish them in different casks.
The history of independent bottling can be traced back as far as the mid-1800s, when Cadenheads began selling and marketing whisky under their own name. Another well-known name is Gordon and MacPhail, which was founded in 1895 as a grocery business in Elgin in Speyside. Some of these older independent bottlers have actually acquired distilleries. From summer 2002, Diageo discontinued the sale of casks from their malt whisky distilleries to independent bottlers. The consequence of the limited supply has seen a number of independent bottlers acquire distilleries of their own. For example, Gordon and MacPhail bought the neighbouring distillery Bunnahabhain in 1993 and the new Cairn distillery, which will see the first official whiskies sometime in the 2030s.
I saw that they actually also, they let you try some of their whiskies if you visit the distillery. Like they have little cheeky samples, but they obviously aren't the official ones.
Oh, so as they're maturing, they let you taste.
Yeah.
That's quite exciting, being part of the journey. Signatory Vintage acquired Edrador. 2000.
That's how I would say it, but who knows?
In 2002, Stuart Hunter Lang have established the Ardnahoe distillery on Islay in 2019. Oh, I'm quite excited about that. I actually looked into cask investment there, but it was out with my budget. The Weems family behind Weems Malts built the Fife-based Kingsbarn distillery in 2009. It is also worth noting that the Cadenheads is owned by the family that also run Springbank, award-winning Springbank, and Glengyle distilleries. However, the independent bottler was sold to the distilling family in 1972 rather than the other way round.
That's what I think makes it a little bit more confusing. There are independent bottlers that also are in charge of distilleries, so it's kind of like, it's a bit weird. I think Ardnamurchan is the same, isn't it, with the Adelphi?
Yes, the Adelphi with the wee dancing man logo. They've got both going on as well, haven't they?
Yeah. We've been gifted a fair number of samples during this year from various independent bottlers.
Yay, thank you. Keep the whiskies coming through the door.
Yeah, we love a sample.
We love it.
So one of them is the Whisky Baron, who sent a full founder's collection, including a Port Charlotte 13-year-old, 16-year-old Bunnahabhain, Fettercairn 10-year-old, and more. So they have also this Renaissance line, which includes some luxurious single casks like Springbank 30, which, we would happily accept. No, I think it's sold out, actually. The idea is based on the original Whisky Barons of the late 19th century. The Whisky Barons were a small group of pioneers that revolutionized the perception of whisky, presenting it as like the sophisticated dram for the London gentleman. And maybe if you listen to some of our previous episodes, you might remember the story of Glendronach, where they went to London to try to sell whiskey and couldn't, and met the ladies of the night. And so all these distilleries, all the producers, been trying to make their way into London back in the day. And these barons included men like James Buchanan, Sir Alexander Walker, Sir Peter McKee, and many others.
Whisky Baron's social media is amazing. And the guy who I kind of call the Whisky Baron, that's terrible. I should know his real name. He's got like a super amazing beard.
I know.
He can navigate TikTok, which is beyond me. TikTok is crazy. And he started his own podcast. And I think, do you know what? There's room for us all. Encourage the whiskey podcast listening. And
yeah.
And
I really like the bottles, and they have this kind of, it does look a little bit more sophisticated in a way, with a little kind of goldeny font, and there's a Whisky Baron on the label, but I actually think it kind of looks like the guy.
It does look totally like the guy, and there's a kind of funky edginess to it as well, I think.
Yeah.
And he's quite bold. I've listened to a bit of his podcast, and he's effing all over the place and like just giving his opinions. Then there's the Single Cask, which source exceptional single malt whiskey, Irish whiskey, and American bourbon. I want to say bourbon, but bourbon. bourbon. Their aim is to find great examples of what typifies a particular distillery's characteristics or what showcases a certain maturation technique. Their bottles are styled like a decanter, designed to be passed around a group of friends, and the Single Cask also works as a whisky broker, and you can buy casks directly through them. So that's quite interesting, isn't it?
I love their minis because they're the same shape, but they just like tiny miniature size. They're so cute.
Cute. I love a decanter. Inka, this very week I've purchased a new skull decanter, slightly bigger than my previous one. I'm very excited by it.
I know, I saw it. It looks amazing.
Oh, Inka, I've remembered the Whisky Baron's name. It's Jake Sharp. Yeah, when I say remember, I've quickly looked him up on Instagram because I'm getting super bad for remembering names and that's terrible. But he seems really lovely and his podcast is called The Uncut and Unfiltered Podcast. They're not only doing audio, they're doing video podcasting as well.
Oh, that's brave.
Indeed it is.
And then there's the Whisky Cellar, whose single grain bottlings we actually featured in season 1. The brand owner Keith was here chatting with us. So go back and listen to that episode so you'll learn more about Keith's story and single grain in general, but also more about the Whisky Cellar. The Whisky Cellar also bottles plenty of amazing other like single malts. It's not single grains only. And he has this brand under the Whisky Cellar umbrella, which is called the Easy Sipper. There's been 2 releases so far, 25-year-old single grain from Indy Distillery, and then 8-year-old single malt from Mackmyra Distillery, which we will be sampling soon.
I didn't realise this was the second Easy Sipper. I'm learning on my own podcast. I love it.
Yeah, well, actually, there is a 3rd bottle being released soon, very soon.
Ooh, and there's more. We also have a sample from Ferg and Harris, which is a luxury single cask single malt brand. They pair exquisite whiskies with different wood finishes for truly distinctive drams. They've bottled a 32-year-old Glenrothes and a 12-year-old Linkwood, which was finished in a ruby port hogshead. Basically, there are so many independent bottlers, aren't there, Inka? We're certainly not mentioning them all in one episode. We've had an episode on the Scotch Malt Whisky Society and Douglas Lang & Co. remarkable regional malts before, so go ahead, treat yourself. If you've not listened, tune into those as well. So let's start the sampling because that's what we're here for.
Dram on fire.
Okay, so like I just mentioned, the Easy Sipper. So Easy Sipper is kind of 70s, has a 70s vibe, doesn't it? There's umbrellas, not umbrellas, but rainbows.
Yeah, it's kind of got like a psychedelic feeling. It's very brightly labelled, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I quite like all the colors and the vibe. So we have the 8-year-old single malt from Mackmyra Distillery, which is matured 50 meters below ground in virgin American oaks and bottled at 49.5% ABV. So Keith kindly gifted us a bottle each. So let's start with that one. What do you think about the color?
Sunset.
Yeah, sunset. That's very on brand, isn't it?
Yeah, it is actually.
There's actually like on the logo as well, there's sun setting, isn't it? With the rays.
Maybe that was inspiring me as I was observing the colour.
Yeah, but I would agree. Okay, so all the Easy Sippers are said to be on the sweet side. So it's a sharing dram, the sweetest you can get. So I can definitely get that on the nose. Like even if I still sound a little bit blocked, but actually I can finally get the sweetness through my nostrils. So
your nosing powers are almost back to full super strength.
yeah, so I was getting Hubba Bubba. What is it? The
I love
bubble
the way
gum.
you say that. Hubba bubba. I love that.
Oh my god. Yeah, so that bubble gum,
Mhm.
loads and loads of cocktail cherries, those bright red ones.
Mhm.
Then I was getting a little bit pink grapefruit or some sort of citrus there on the background. What, did you get anything like that at all?
Yes, I sure did, Inka. I got kind of white grapes for the fruitiness, very much the sweetness. I can completely relate to the cocktail cherries. I don't know if you've heard of the tray bake that you put in the fridge, and it's called 15.
No.
See, when I'm on a bad sugar attack, I used to make this. Oh my God, it's so good. But I can't make it anymore because I just eat too much of it. So it's called 15 because you make it with like 15 digestive biscuit, 15 glacé cherries, those bright red ones, and condensed milk and desiccated coconut. And then you like mush it up, put it in the fridge, and then it's just like a sugar high. But very much those, I got that kind of like lovely sweetness and the cherry and all of that biscuitiness and condensed milk on the nose.
Wow, that
Yeah.
sounds pretty intense, actually. Like
Yeah.
proper sugar rush, isn't it?
Indeed.
And maybe like, is it Bakewell tart? Is that the
Ye-
one with cherries as well?
Yeah, that's the one with
Yeah.
the kind of almondy cherry.
Yeah, I think that's like now with air, I'm getting that kind of almondy cherry stuff.
Mhm.
Also, I was getting kind of with the air a little bit more cinnamon spice, maybe those kind of red wine poached pears.
Okay, yeah.
But on the palate, I was still getting the bubblegum sweetness, vanilla icing. Then I felt there was a little bit some sort of saltiness or some sort of spice.
I found the spice quite strong, Inka. I've written fiery, fresh, like ginger spice, kind of citrusy fruits, kind of lemony, limeish, but then like almost like a kind of sour cherry syrup. It was way less sweet than I imagined it would be on the palate.
I would still say it's sweet. I can definitely get the ginger, but I didn't find it that spicy. I feel like it goes away so fast.
You know, we've had quite a different experience. I don't know if I had got so mesmerized in my memory of this tray bake that I was anticipating extraordinary sweetness. I'm not quite sure what happened there, but I was like, oh, this is like super spicy and sour.
Well, I definitely get that kind of the spice in it because I was trying to figure out whether it's kind of that, sometimes when you have like a salty whiskey, it sometimes
Yeah.
feels like it's spicy, but it's just the saltiness.
Yeah.
So that's why I couldn't really figure it out. But I think ginger makes sense. I was getting a little bit oak as well, and then like super overly ripe peaches and pears.
Oh, lovely.
Like really just become really sweet and juicy.
Yeah, juicy, nice.
But there was definitely something minty on the finish, like something fresh.
I've written surplum on the finish, which is Scottish for sour plums. It's these little hard sweets. I used to buy them as a kid, like, and your face would all like pucker in.
Oh, I like that kind of stuff.
Yes, surplums.
It's definitely a sweeter dram. Is it an easy sipper?
It's not as easy a sipper for me as I imagined. It's a little bit spicy for my palate, but after hearing your tasting notes, I think I'm going to go back to it again and have the air in it a little bit more and see if I can pick up a wee bit more of that sweetness. So I'm really looking forward to doing that. What about for you, Inka?
Well, it is an easy sipper if you like sweet whiskies. I enjoyed it, but I wouldn't sip more than a dram because it's so sweet for me. I know there's lots of people who love their sweet drams, so
Yeah.
maybe we should actually send some for the Finns because Sana was loving all the sweet drams.
She was. Maybe I should make some tray bake. I don't know how if it would last in the post.
Just in time for Christmas.
Ferg and Harris, Speyside 12-year-old, 6 months in a first fill Pedro Jimenez sherry hogshead at 55.7% ABV. And we don't know anything about the distillery.
I didn't look too much either, but it doesn't say anything on their bottle or it didn't say anything on their website either. So, because they had few other releases as well, and they've mentioned the names like the Liquid and, but this one didn't have anything. So I don't know.
Who can tell us? Give us the gossip. What distillery is this from?
I don't think I'm quite as talented to be able to tell. There's so many distilleries in Speyside. It's just...
I'm just glad if I can tell if it's peated or unpeated in a blind taste, and I'm not going that far to detect distilleries.
Sometimes the peat is so gentle as well that you don't even really think about it.
For sure. What did you think of the colour of this one, Inka?
Well, this one was kind of dark, like a browny, reddish, ambery. I think all our whiskies today are pretty dark in colour.
Yes, well, we'll come back to that because one of our tastings, we've got different whiskies. I would agree. I've got a kind of almost a toffee-ish colour.
And the nose was amazing. So delicious. I don't know, it was kind of sweet, juicy. You know those dense fruit cakes that you always mention. There was also those cherries, they were here. Not the cocktail cherries, but different kind of cherries.
Yes, I agree. I think it's super nice on the nose. I don't know if I was inspired by the colour, but it was reminding me of like dark treacle toffee. My dad used to eat this treacle toffee with Brazil nuts in it when I was a little girl, and I would like risk my teeth on it, but it was really soft, very strong flavours. I was getting that in the nose. Don't know if you get them in Finland, but you know those really skinny biscuits? They're like almond crisp and they've got like wee bits of almond in them. They're quite a strong smell. I got them. And then this is maybe a bit random, but I was like, oh, I'm not getting coastal saltiness. However, I feel I'm in a field kind of near to the coast. I'm getting outside smell. Can you meet me there in the field, Inka?
I can definitely meet in the field.
Do you know what? That's quite philosophical, like the Rumi poem. 1 minute we're nosing drams, the next minute we're just getting a little bit deep and meaningful.
It's very, very pleasant nose, and there's a lot to discover if you give it some time. That nose just gave me so much like anticipation. I was expecting something mind-blowing.
Hopes and dreams activated in the nose.
Yeah. So it was spiced for sure. Nutty, you know, the classic dried fruits, classic sherry influence for sure. A little bit sweetness on the background. And then I was thinking this kind of buttery crust. I don't know. I was trying to think about the word. You know, when you make a tart, like a pie.
Yes.
So you have that kind of buttery pastry thing that you put on.
Yes.
I don't know what that's called.
I'm totally with you on that.
So that's what I was getting.
Because you mentioned with regard to the last dram, that cherry bakewell, but you know, cherry bakewell kind of tart / pie has got that slightly kind of like heavy pastry. I've got that. Also maybe the density of a sponge pudding, not the syrup of it, but you know, like the kind of heavy dense sponge. And I found it quite warming, like with baking spices, but not super spicy.
Yeah, baking spices, good call. It's just left me a little bit, you know, like it was all right, but I felt like it was a classic sherry dram.
How did you find the finish on it?
Well, that's the thing. I was getting that buttery, crusty thing at the finish, and I don't think the finish is very long at all. Medium to short to medium.
It sounds like I've enjoyed it on the palate more than you, Inka. I've written a really nice on the finish and was getting like a beautiful cigar with the flaky layers of the tobacco and aromatic, just ambience of relaxed evening. I was like all the way there on the finish.
Now that you mentioned those like tobacco leaves, and I just had a sip earlier, I can definitely get like that kind of damp leaves, like autumn leaves, you know, on a wet day. That kind of, there's something earthy in the finish, maybe. I guess you just maybe in general prefer more of the sherried ones than I do. So, but yeah, it wasn't bad. I didn't mean it that way. The nose, I think I was just, because the nose, I was like, oh.
Yeah, enchanted nose. Expecting a magical journey. I really enjoyed this one. I would be reaching for a dram of this again.
Next up is the Single Cask Caol Ila 4-year-old. Bottled at 58.6% ABV, and it is first fill PX Octave 50-liter cask. This is the one that I was saying earlier about the cute miniature bottle. Super cute.
Yes, they're kind of chunky and delicious, aren't they?
Okay, so I'm not sure if you're going to love this as much as I did. But I was like, whoa, take me to all these peated fields. Love it.
Yes, I'm predicting this one will be for the win for Inka.
The color was very dark reddish. Again, like I want to say amber, but it was a bit more reddish.
Yeah, really quite dark. I don't know if it was the way I was looking at it in the small bottle, but hurtling towards mahogany.
Yes, definitely. Nice, kind of giving me autumn vibes for sure. But on the nose, oh my God, I was getting barbecued pork served in a tray of fresh strawberries. Like, you know, like sliced strawberries. So you can really get the scent, you know?
Nice mixture.
Yeah, it was just divine.
I definitely hear you on the bacon. I got salty bacon, you know, potato chips. I also got marshmallows. A lovely smell of boatyard. growing up on the coast and then on the Isle of Mull, and my dad had boats when I was small, so I would often trail along by his side and be dragged around boatyards. And I love the smell of a boatyard. It's like salty and kind of like mildly fishy, but not really. And then there's engine oil and wood and just like lots of lovely boatyard smell. So I got a big waft of that.
Love it. I was also like thinking oaky biscuits, and okay, I'm thinking oaky biscuits with smoked cheese, but without the smell being cheesy. But you know that when you just smell the smoky cheese, that the smoke is so strong.
Like it.
Palate, how was it for you?
I had bonfire roasted beef burgers and toasted marshmallows on the bonfire. So again, that kind of meaty sweetness mix. And then I kind of felt like there was a herbal vibe going on. Couldn't quite pin it down. So I just kind of guessed the herb thyme.
There's definitely like strong sweetness, almost that kind of sugary, I don't know, gives you like a funky mouthfeel. Quite strong in peat, but it works really nicely with the sweetness. I quite like that, the contrast.
Balanced.
Yeah. There's definitely some sort of earthiness. But again, like I was thinking, I don't know why, I'm just always thinking pork, maybe because I don't really eat pork anymore. Like, I want bacon. But like maple, literally, like pancakes with crispy bacon and maple syrup.
Nice. On the finish, I've got smoky bacon, potato chips again. I almost wanted to like smell my fingers, like thinking I've got bacon breath and fingers. And I was like,
taste a little bit like, those haggis and black pepper crisps.
Yeah, if I was sipping that like in a function, I would be like frightened to breathe on someone thinking I was smelling all bacony,
Yeah. Yeah. But it's so good. I'm loving this. That was very good.
I thought it was nice. Oh, I can see how people are going to love that. And it's like beautifully balanced and like qualitative. But it's a wee bit grown up on the palate for me, Inka.
This is the funny one because we got all those samples from the Whisky Baron, but unfortunately we didn't really have time to sample them together or share them properly. So I just took a couple of bottles and Jen got some, and so we got different bottles. This is the last dram of the night. So Jen, you got the Bunna, and I have Port Charlotte 13-year-old, which is distilled at Bruladi in 2007 and matured exclusively in Fres Bosne Romania Barrique. No idea how to pronounce that.
No, that was nicely done.
No, I don't even know what that is. Like, is it wine? Is it wine? Is it sherry? Is it brandy? But sounds cool. And yeah, so 13 years old, bottled at 60.5 ABV.
Ooh, heavy hitter.
Also, actually, just a quick one, just forgot to say on the previous one, considering that it was a very high ABV, I didn't find like the nose was very nice. It wasn't like in your face, alcoholic or anything. You wouldn't think that's so strong.
Good shout. If that was a blind tasting, you would definitely anticipate that still being a nice high ABV for the flavors, but not as high as 58.6.
Yeah, exactly. So this Port Charlotte is really nice. Again, so this one is super dark in color.
I can see that actually. Wow.
Amber reddish.
We can see each other, although we're not on video on YouTube, but we can see each other while we record, in case you think I'm like just psychically tuning in there.
Yeah. The nose is very autumn note, also with loads of summer berries, like, those red gooseberries, like really kind of juicy fruits.
Nice.
Or berries, I guess. Really yummy. And I wasn't getting any peat on the nose. Autumn mixed with summer. Amazing. On the palate, that's when the peat comes alive. There's quite a lot like a drying mouthfeel compared to the previous drams of the day. I'm still getting loads of berries, like blackberries. It's just super juicy at the same time.
Nice.
It's funny because the previous Caol Ila, I was thinking pork on a tray of strawberries. And this is kind of more dry, kind of ashy, like a bonfire or a fireplace kind of thing, but then there's that kind of berry mix, but different types of berries. Like it.
And the finish?
It's sweeter, and I'm still getting now maybe more red berries, and it's not as dry on the finish as I was expecting. I think there's just the initial sip, but very unusual for like Port Charlotte.
Yeah.
It's a bit more fruity.
A nice surprise.
Yeah, again, like really nice dram, and I should probably find out what that cask, what is it?
Yeah, we should Google that, shouldn't we?
I know. I feel like I'm like came into this episode totally unprepared, but you know, we don't look things up too much. We don't search the whiskies because I don't personally, well, like you mentioned this before as well, like we don't really like to know what other people think
Yeah,
or what are the tasting notes given by the distillery. It's just nice to discover it yourself, but I probably should have
definitely.
looked up the Boston Romania.
I listen to a lot of crime podcasts and they'll list all the people in the production and they'll say fact checked by, and I'm like, it's just Inka and I. We have no one else. We don't have a fact checker just yet. Oh, well, welcome to my Buna world. Thank you, Whisky Baron. This is a 16-year-old distilled at Bunnahabhain in 2002. I want to say Bunnahabhain, as David Brody taught us, Bunnahabhain.
I know. I've been practicing actually today. I was
Yeah.
thinking, Bunnahabhain.
Yeah, Bunnahabhain. 2002 and matured exclusively in bourbon hogshead for 16 years, and it's bottled at 51% volume. As I mentioned earlier, it's a beautiful light kind of sunrise straw colour. I was finding it beautiful in the nose. Madagascan vanilla ice cream, coffee foam with chocolate shavings, creme brulee crust, and my shoulders were beginning to like get all like kind of dancey swagger. I just like felt all excited in my seat and my shoulders were going, which is always a good sign for me when I get that when I'm nosing a whiskey.
Tinkling spine, I remember.
Do you know, this is potentially slightly bizarre notes for the palate, but you know, we were talking about pastry earlier. I got my Gran Chrissy's steak pie flaky pastry with steak pie gravy.
Oh,
it was so good. Like my grandfather was a
What?
butcher. My gran worked in the shop. She made these amazing steak pies for the shop. She was like legend. And I got that. I was like, oh, this is so sippable, so sippable. And I was like sipping away. And I was getting all sorts. I also felt I was getting the taste of metal tools.
Oh my God, like explain.
I know, I don't know what I was like, oh, because when you say that, you think that sounds like horrible or tinny or irony, but it wasn't. Again, I quite like the smell of like industrial warehouses. But then I'm like, yeah, it's not just metal tools that I'm tasting. I'm getting like beautiful whipped cream from a homemade trifle. There was just so much going on. And then in the finish, as if I've had a homemade trifle, you know, with the sponge, the sherry soaked sponge and the jam and all that and the aftertaste, but kind of like a hay barn. And I thought, do you know what? I feel as if in that glass there's been a family celebration and like I've been on a nature adventure.
Love it. Sorry.
In one glass, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is like offering me a lot.
Oh my God, it's taking you in a totally amazing journey.
Yeah. It is through space and time, through, you know, celebratory meals and like out adventuring in sheds and hay barns. But I guess it's just, you know, testimony to what we've spoke about many times, like, you know, that kind of sensory part of your experience linking to memories and then the tastes that you've had that are kind of unique to you or your family.
Yeah, overall, I would say pretty decent whiskeys this week.
Whew, yes, indeed.
Go independent bottlers. Ooh.
Absolutely.
Whisky Sisters Whisky Fact.
As we mentioned the octave cask earlier, would you like to explain what is the difference between quarter cask and octave?
Both are smaller casks, which mean the spirit will mature faster as it will have more contact with the wood. So quarter cask is a quarter of a butt, which makes it 125 liters. An octave cask is about an eighth of a butt, so 50 liters. Also, octave gets the name from music, which always has to do with number 8, so that makes sense.
Oh, definitely.
There's been quite a few quarter cask and octave casks recently, and like Kilchoman has a funny one because they've got some inconsistencies on their releases. So they had octave casks that were 100 liters, so it doesn't quite, you know, octave should always, I think, should always be 50 liters. So it's a kind of funky one. Oh, but I guess it was like 8 of a cask, so it kind of makes sense, but it's a bit weird one.
Oh, I wasn't aware of that with Kilchoman.
So don't always believe everything on the label.
See, my inner teenager, when you were giving me that fact, I was thinking of Beavis and Butthead, like they would be like, he said butts, like I kept kind of thinking that.
Oh my god. I think we're always like on MTV. They were also saying that.
Yeah, totally. Reminds me of my wee brother and his friends used to like watch it and kind of be like them. We could dress up as Beavis and Butthead in one of our future
Oh
videos.
my god, yes, next Halloween.
Or
Fuck
Wayne
yeah.
and Garth.
You've been listening to the Whisky Sisters podcast.
So next week, Sam from Cask 88 will return to chat about Taiwanese whiskey. He actually lived in Taiwan for quite some time, so you can consider him as an expert of some sort. And we will be sampling Kavalan and another Taiwanese whiskey, which we will reveal next week.
Fantastic. It'll be lovely to have Sam back. Find yourself some Taiwanese whiskey and tune in next Wednesday. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at whiskysisters.podcast, Twitter at Whisky Sisters, and Facebook at Whisky Sisters Podcast. And if you are enjoying what we do, please tell all your friends and get them to join us.
Yes, and subscribe on your favorite podcast channels. Come on.
And
people.
review us.
Do it all.
Yeah, we love it.
So, may your glass be full and your dram on fire.
Beavis and Butthead.